Hey guys, welcome back for more tutorials. I'm your host Magnet, and today we're going to be talking about defending early attacks in PvT. I have a lot of people asking me about how to defend things like random marine attacks in the early game, maybe mine drops or Hellion plays or stuff like that. So we're going to talk about all about the early game in PvT and how to get to the point where your build is kind of to the place that you want it. So let's go ahead and jump into the game. Actually, I need to mention something really quickly, so we're just going to watch this really quick replay. This is Zest versus Maru in probably the stupidest game of all time, and you'll see why. And that's because if we're only looking at Zest's vision right now, so he drops a pylon, and shortly afterward he's going to drop his gateway, which is very normal for this matchup, of course. So he drops a gateway, and he scouts, and there's a proxy in the base. And against Terran, if they're building up a proxy, they have to have an SCV babysitting it at all times. So if you ever find a proxy in your base like this, and you can just kill the SCV, then that's going to put them way behind if they decided to do something like this. So obviously scouting out for cheeses and proxies and stuff like that is going to be a big win if you can do that. So this game is so funny because Zest starts to just attack the SCV, and all you need to do is really just shift-click your way onto this SCV. I can't get a good angle on that, but you just shift-click attack on that SCV, and even if it stops building and does something else and comes back to build, your probe will keep following it. And then this is game over. So literally the shortest game I've ever seen on the pro level, and that's because if Maru was having to rebuild his barracks back at home, Zest could easily just chrono boost out a couple of units and go kill him. So this is, I need to say that you don't really see a lot of cheeses in this matchup because they really don't work. So just scout out for stupid things like this because you could still lose to something like a bunker rush in your main base. I think Maru's plan here was either a bunker rush or like proxy marauders. So just scout around your base a little bit, maybe scout around your natural, and if you can ever find an SCV building something like that, just kill it, and then there's no way he's ever going to be able to finish that. So that's, I guess that really needs to be said, and maybe this replay need to be shown because it's probably the dumbest game I've ever seen. So this won't be so much about cheese because there's really not a lot of Terrans that cheese at high level, so it's hard to get replays for that. But more so in the super early game, it's how to defend really silly attacks that they might bring out, and we'll show you kind of all about those because I know a lot of people don't understand how they're supposed to hold these quicker attacks. And to be fair, whoops, I pressed the wrong button. To be fair, a lot of the builds from Terran are kind of designed to make you waste your mothership core energy, overcharging at a time where you're not really supposed to. So that's kind of the theme behind some of these pushes, is they're not really expecting to kill you with them, they're just expecting you to make you waste energy, and then maybe a follow-up attack will do something. So in this game we're looking at Huck, and he's playing this barcode, and this barcode's actually Neeb. Neeb is really one of my favorite Terrans. He does a lot of really weird openers, but in this game in particular, Huck is he just defends this perfectly, and I wanted to show you guys kind of the idea behind what he's doing here. So he opens Nexus first. This is kind of unusual in this matchup, and you can try it if you're on really big 4-player maps that are hard to scout out where you are. You could get the same effect off of this off just a normal 1-git expand though. The only difference is that his Nexus will finish a little faster. He'll have more probes, but I guess this even lends more credence to it that he has less units and he still holds us off just fine. So what Huck is doing is he's scouting out here. He's trying to figure out what his opponent's doing, so he scouts right after the Nexus. And you can see that a barracks and a factory are on the way, and you definitely do need to get this scout in here. Usually around this timing, around 3:30 or so, you can see a lot of stuff. This is typically when a Reaper would start to move out. So if you can hide your probe away from a Reaper, you can usually just walk it in there. Sometimes you might get it killed by Marines, but usually opening just straight up Marines is pretty rare nowadays. And if you see a factory coming up, then you know that they have to be doing something weird with that factory, whether that's mines or whether that's Hellions or something like that. So you need to kind of customize your defenses based upon what's going on. And this is one of the easiest times to get a scout, especially against Reaper openers, if you're able to hide your probe. So Huck came in here and saw this factory, and he wants to see exactly what this factory is for. So he does something really smart, and he drops a pylon. And if he lets this pylon finish, which it'll take the Terran forever to kill, he's going to be able to see if there's any add-ons put down on this. So this is a really cool play that you don't see very often, but that I think is really smart. So Huck can still see this, and he sees a starport coming up. So now he knows that there's a drop coming up, or very, very rarely a Banshee, and I can't overstress how rare that actually is to see Banshees in this matchup. So mine drops are much more common. We can see this coming down from the Terran now. So this also is going to be paired with Hellions and Marines, of course. It's a really typical drop. So Huck back at home, he's going to go ahead and continue to get some units out here. The Stalker and the Mothership Core is really common. He's also going to add on a Forge, which is one of the best ways to defend against mine drops, especially factory play, because they do really good damage to mines, or of course they obviously detect mines, and they do really good damage against Hellions. So if he were to drop a cannon in his mineral line back here, and then he had some sort of detection out the front, then he could defend this really, really well. And this is kind of the whole idea behind these early attacks, is if you know it's coming and you can do it correctly, then you can defend against pretty much anything. So we can see the drop coming in now, and this is actually a really strong drop. These are pretty hard to hold, but just a couple of units out here, whether it's a couple Stalkers and a Mothership Core, you should really have 2 or 3 Stalkers out as soon as possible. And then a Robo's out, and a Forge is out as well. This is a super safe play here from Huck, just 2 gateways. And this Forge obviously is just to drop cannons, and the robotics can be to grab an observer if he starts to burrow mines out here and whatnot. But you just need to be careful with your probes and really not lose any here, because the economic lead right now is by 5. And Neeb's command center is just barely starting, so Huck could get a really good economic advantage if he could just not lose anything to this drop. So we'll go ahead and watch and see what he does. See, the mine is burrowing here on the high ground. You just definitely need to keep everything out of range if you possibly can. He does lose a Stalker to that mine, and that's okay. I mean, it's not the greatest thing. What you'd really want to do is probably just lose 1 probe to this mine. So I think it was unfortunate because this Stalker was popping out at that time. If you could just micro that thing back and then maybe run a probe in there and let it die to the mine, that's probably your best way, or just don't let anything die. But he doesn't really have any detection right now. So, well, as we talked about, the cannon is coming up in here in the mineral line, and that's why he's not dropping the mineral line right now. And note that Huck's positioning to start holding this off was between his 2 bases. It wasn't out in front of his natural, so he's able to hold this a little easier. This would also be a lot easier if his Mothership Core was out faster, because then he would be able to overcharge. We see the overcharge come down now. He's just pushing away this Hellion, and he needs to really not lose anything to this. And you can see Neeb's having kind of a hard time getting this put together, but as soon as this Observer's out for Huck, he can detect this mine, and he can also use just a couple of units here and there just to defend this Nexus. So the Stalker especially is really important because it can outrange these Marines, and continuing to make Stalkers is going to be your best way to hold most of this stuff. So he's going to still be warping in, or at least he should here in just a second. There we go. So all this mine is really trying to do is trying to get Huck moving from one base to the other. But he's really just staying super safe here, and right now Neeb is trying to bait him up the ramp. This is kind of a little uncommon. A lot of times you'll just see the mine drop back in your mineral line. All you really have to do is just move probes away there, so that's not anything too fancy of a defense. Now you can see the Observer on the way, and once this mine is dead, the rest of this drop can be cleaned up pretty easily. And it's mostly just with the overcharge and just making smart decisions with his units here. Plus the cannon will buy him some time. So down goes the mine. The drop is still in the base though, and he just needs to pull his Stalkers up here. Try to target down the medevac if you possibly can. But now all of a sudden, he has plenty of production here. He has a couple of gateways, he has a couple of observers, there's still the cannon here, and he didn't really lose anything to that timing. And if you're able to maintain your focus and keep making probes throughout all that time, now we can see the economic lead is by 9 workers. So he's in pretty good shape for the rest of the game, and did really well to hold off that timing there. So I guess it's just really knowing what's going on, putting out Stalkers and trying to keep them out of mine range, and getting some form of detection is really going to be what's important here, as well as spending your overcharges wisely. So Huck did really well at defending that. Take a look at a more standard play that you can see in most games, and these are going to continue to progress into later and later stages of the game, so that we can kind of build up to what you want to do in most PvTs anyway. So this time we're going to be watching Alicia versus this barcode once again, and I also think this barcode is Neeb if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's right. I don't know who else it would be. So Alicia's obviously up here. This is going to be a much more standard play and much more standard defense. So it's not going to be any crazy things like mines and Hellions again. So Alicia is just going to run a normal 1-gate expand, which we've seen plenty of times. And of course, if you need to see more about these openers, you can go and watch the openers video, which is in the same playlist. It's down in the description, so look out for that. Like I was talking about, most of the time you're going to see a Reaper. Let's imagine from the last game that they just opened Reaper, and let's say you maybe rallied your probe over this way. At this timing, about 3:30 is when the Reaper leaves to go see what's going on. You could walk in a probe in here and see everything that's going on. So if they were making a factory, or if they had started a command center or something, you can see everything if you walk a probe in here at this time, and that's really key to knowing what you should be doing in the early game. Alicia's just opting not to scout and being a little bit greedy about it, so... Of course, we probably should mention defending Reapers. They're super simple to defend, honestly. Just getting out one Stalker is going to be great against them because you can move the Stalker around, kind of defend them from picking off probes. Most pros will do it with just a Mothership Core, and that's really just up to you to control it correctly. But yeah, I mean, if you just go straight for a Stalker after your Cybernetics Core, your Stalker should come out if you Chrono Boost it before the Reaper gets to your base. So that's really simple. The Reaper's not really there to kill a lot, it's just there to scout. It did get a probe right there because Alicia wasn't really pulling it very well, and he went Mothership Core first, and he's going to be scouting with that. So, yeah. I mean, he's getting scouting information in some form or another, so I guess that's good for him. But he's just double checking that there's no weird factory plays or anything. You should see the second and third barracks here. And this is usually what's going to be causing the most pressure here. Most Terrans will start in a command center behind this. Really rarely you will see like 2 and 3 barracks openings on one bases, or on one base. I can't pluralize one base, that doesn't make sense. Every once in a while you will see stuff like that. But the defense is still pretty much the same. It's just getting a couple of gateway units out and overcharging your Nexus and just controlling well against it. And we'll see a little bit of that as it comes up. So Mothership Core is just verifying that there are 3 barracks up here along with this command center. And I honestly say that 2 barracks and 3 barracks plays are really rare because they're not much more powerful than this type of build. They come out maybe like 30 seconds faster, which, I mean, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. You're going to defend it the exact same way. And they're a lot more rare because if they fail with those types of attacks, then they're way, way behind, whereas if he fails with this one, it's not that big of a deal. He still has another command center mining, and he's still equal on economy, so it doesn't really make a difference. So we're seeing him start to move out here, and there's one Marauder here with a bunch of Marines. He does not have stim, and he won't have stim by the time it's there, so this is about the earliest timing you're going to see off of this type of attack. Maybe on one base they might have stim as well, but it's, again, still just the same type of defense. And the defense is going to be a couple of Stalkers, your Mothership Core for overcharge, and the Sentry. There's going to be a Sentry usually in the main base, because a lot of Terrans will come up here and they'll run up there and start attacking. And if you're getting hit by the Nexus Cannon, they'll try to run up the ramp. But then if you can just force field the ramp when they start to run up, then they've wasted all this time running back and forth, and they're going to lose a lot of units. If you wanted to be super cute, you could open with a Sentry first, and sometimes it depends on how fast you got it, but I think it should have 100 energy by the time you got to this point. So if you really want to defend like that, and maybe a 1 Stalker and 2 Sentries or something like that, you could keep your 2 Sentries on the high ground and your 1 Stalker on the low ground. You'll note that his Stalkers are all out in front. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you got the Sentry energy high enough, you could force field here and then force field there and kind of trap him on the ramp and make him eat all the Nexus damage. Something I don't see very often, but it's still possible. So that's something else to think about if you get a lot of people trying to run up your ramp. And that would just crush the push. That would be kind of funny too. So anyway, he's moving across the map right now, and Alicia does have his 3 Stalkers. And keeping your Stalkers forward is going to be really important against this, because you can pick off a couple of units before it even comes to your base. So we'll see here, as the Marines come up, you can really kite well with these Stalkers. You need to keep an eye on them, but you can stay out of range from these units for quite a long time and kill a lot of it before it even gets to you. So he's still pressing up here. He's just going to pick off a Marine. He's just going to micro back here, and he doesn't want to lose any units, so he's going to basically just send this all the way back. And he was kind of sloppy there. He lost it. But look how damaged these all are. He's already lost a few Marines here just by controlling his Stalkers out in the middle of the map. And if he really wants to keep pushing, then you just have to wait. And now he throws down the overcharge. Stalkers can still do their damage. You just want to keep these things alive, so you can keep microing them the exact same way you have been all the way up to this point. And then notice that he does have a sentry on the high ground if he tries to just run past. So Neeb wisely just backing off here. And from this point, it's really up to Alicia to start playing a more normal game. Of course, we did talk about if there's a little bit of a follow-up as far as a stim timing or something, then the same thing goes. After this point, he's going to be looking for ways to hold it with a little more units. Maybe he can warp in some more stalkers here. If he gets really desperate, he can warp in more sentries and just kind of wall off a little bit and trap some units in against the Nexus Cannon. Your next Nexus Cannon should come down at about 9 minutes, so you'll notice that he can chain these together for quite a while and stay safe for quite a while. But if you can ever get your Colossus tech up, or if you can ever get something like Charge or Blink done, that's going to really crush these plays. And we've talked about Blink and Storm and stuff in another video, so go back and look at those if that's what you're using to defend these. So yeah, that's basically the way to not really take much damage from these. He's lost a couple Stalkers here, and honestly he didn't have to if he didn't control incorrectly or make mistakes, excuse me. So he's doing just fine. We'll take a look at one more that involves the later stages of tech and how to hold later timings that are still considered early. They're basically just trying to get at you before your tech is done. But we'll take a look at that. And we're taking a look finally at Oz versus Heart. So, we'll see that in just a second. As soon as the game decides to load. Okay. So Oz over here on the left, and we'll hide the timer, show the names, whatever we want to do. Cycle through the tabs like a madman for no reason. And Oz just getting all this stuff put together here, obviously, running pretty much the same build. He's going to be concerned about Reapers, of course, so getting out that first Mothership Core or first Stalker is something that he's going to focus on for the first little bit. He's mining a little bit of gas. This is kind of unusual, and I wanted to show a little bit of a different way to hold these type of things. He's opening Oracle, and he's going to get that Oracle in there as soon as possible, because this is a really fast Stargate. You'll notice it's before Nexus, and it was before any of the units as well, so this is about the fastest Oracle you can get. He's actually supply blocked for a little bit as how fast the Oracle is, so if you get your Oracle out, the idea here is that he's preventing a lot of these early attacks because the Terran has to stay in his base to defend stuff like this. And we talked about this a little bit in the Storm openers, but this can still be for things like Colossus. But if you get the Oracle up here, he all of a sudden has to invest a lot of units in staying home, and he can't really afford to move out on the map because if he does, then the next Oracle that comes out is just going to kill all of his SCVs or kill all of his Marines that are reinforcing here. You don't really have to do a lot with this Oracle, and it's more important just to keep it alive. You can see it does have 6 kills, and I think a couple of those were Marines, but just keeping it back at the base is going to offer you a lot of safety, and it's just going to prevent a lot of these attacks. And Oz is really just looking for anything you can pick up possible. You don't want to fly these into turrets. If you can catch SCVs, maybe like building buildings or something, or Marines that are just coming out of the barracks or something, it's totally worth it to do stuff like that. But this is just keeping Hart in his base. He can't possibly move out against something like this, because as soon as he does, Oz will have a lot of freedom, especially to kill units down here. He might be able to kill, like I was talking about, Marines that are just coming out of the buildings. So these Oracles just offer a lot of safety in that regard. But once Hart gets this turret up and finishes it up, he can start worrying a little more about putting some pressure on. And that's what we're going to see here. And it won't be until he gets Stim and his medevacs done. So that's usually one of the first timings that Terran looks for, because Stim and medevacs are obviously good upgrades for them and good units. And that's usually when they're going to start their pressure, because they have a little bit of flexibility and a little more power behind it. And you're going to see that in pretty much any game against Terran. At least they should be trying to run some type of medevac and Stim timing. And by that point, you really do need to have some form of tech done, because that usually won't come out until about 10 minutes. So if you have Colossus done, or if you have Blink done, or Charge, or Storm, or whatever, you need to have one of those done to be able to hold off these timings. And then from there, it regulates into a normal game. So it's really on you to make sure that you're doing everything at the right time. And if you're constantly dying to the first medevac timing, then that might just indicate that you're not running a build that's very safe against that type of thing. Considering it's not safe against like the most common or the most common timing there is in this matchup, you might want to consider changing it. So he's still just trying to seek around here, and notice that Hart really hasn't left his base the entire time, and that kind of allows Oz to be as greedy as possible. He's really sitting back home on only 2 sentries and a mothership core because he has so much out here with the oracles. But if he were to push out these 3 oracles, this is actually a pretty high number, by the way. I usually only make 2. But the oracles can still pick off marines. Maybe if they're moving across the map, you can pick off little groups of them like this. So that's also another option. But once the medevacs start coming out here and once Stim finishes up is when we're going to see this timing. And just looking at the production tab here, back on Oz's base, he really has plenty. These 2 sentries can force field the ramp to prevent any units from coming up. He's making Phoenix just to intercept drops. Here's the move out right now, by the way. And note that he has plenty of this stuff, and note that the attack is a lot later than usual, because he's had to spend a lot of time trying to deal with those oracles in there. So counterattacking with oracles is a really good way to delay it and hold back a lot of these timings. But by the time it comes out, you need to have your tech ready. So if you mess up and it's not ready, then that's definitely on you. It has nothing to do with the game being broken or anything like that. So he comes up here. The 2 force fields are pretty easy to hit, so he can just hit those 2. And Hart absolutely can't stick around. He might seek out for more drops, but that's why you have the oracles sitting around and the Phoenix sitting around to spot for those. He also has an observer to see what's going on with these drops, and there's really not much more that Hart can do with this timing, so he has to go home. So that's pretty much a good rundown of stuff you're going to see in this matchup. So I hope that this at least gave you guys a little bit of information on what you can do to delay and hold off a lot of these early attacks in this matchup. And I mostly wanted to do this now because I have late game PvT stuff coming up, and I wanted to be like, well, you already know how to survive to this point in the game, and we've already reviewed the next part of the game, which is having your tech already fleshed out. So yeah. Anyway, that's going to pretty much do it for this video. So if you want more Protoss tutorials, there's a link down in the description, and look out for that. And if you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you guys soon.